Welcome, welcome. This is Jenny coming at you with Jenny Fit Start, more specifically, Jenny's Fit Bunch. I want to welcome you to our next nutritional video. As you can see, I have a guest today. I'm very excited. I thought y'all could take a little break from me and get some information that I think might be not only interesting, but maybe even helpful. So with me today, we have a big deal, this is Kevin Foyle, and he is the area executive chef for the Queen Casino and Entertainment. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
And this is in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. So I want to welcome him, and we're just going to talk a little bit about some things that mainly that I'm curious in and that I think might be something that you might be interested in. And we'll let him do more of the talking than me. But I do want to welcome you. Thank you so much, Kevin, for joining
Oh,
us.
thank you for inviting me. I
I
appreciate it.
really appreciate it. I know you're super busy because you're always working, but um, for dummies like me, when I hear the word chef, I know there's a difference in a chef and a cook. And can you explain first what schooling a chef needs, and more specifically, what schooling you went through and your background in that?
Okay. I guess the difference between a cook and a chef is really just that a chef is someone that's in charge of a kitchen. I mean, that's the textbook definition of the word. Realistically, most chefs started as cooks, kind of worked their way through the industry. I attended Nicholls State University, went to John Pulse Culinary Institute, graduated from there a long time ago. We won't talk about how long ago. And then just kind of worked my way through the restaurant industry. I've done a lot of different things, cook, line cook, prep cook, assistant manager. I owned a restaurant for a while, in which case I was also the dishwasher, the floor cleaner,
Mhm.
did clean the bathrooms, all of the stuff that nobody else wants to do, you kind of get to do as the chef and the owner for sure.
I got
Uh, so being a chef is more about the experience and the amount of time you have in the business and in the industry more than a piece of paper from the school. But
you.
I like
I
to say
gotcha.
that having that culinary degree kind of takes the place of, several years of experience because you learn more in a shorter time period. Whereas I can teach somebody everything they need to know. It may take 10 years because we're also physically working the line and producing food and feeding people all day.
Mhm.
Whereas in school, it's more of a concentrated learning environment. So,
Gotcha. So in culinary school, do they literally take you from the basics up? Does it get as simple and as complicated?
yes.
Hmm.
Well, as you know, I was a culinary instructor for 18 years.
Hmm.
So it started out with this is a knife. This
Hmm.
is how you hold the knife.
Uh-huh.
This is an onion. This is a carrot. All the different vegetables, all the different cuts of meat, kind of go through and explain all of them, where they come from, what they're about,
Gotcha.
and then go into advanced techniques by the time it's done,
That's
for
great.
sure.
And you're from near New Orleans. You can tell everybody about that. But what's your relationship for food when you were like young? Like, what do you think made you get into this industry? And a follow-up question on that, because of where you're from, what are some childhood memories of of the New Orleans kind of culture and food that you learned when you were younger and that you have stayed with you for a little while?
Okay. So probably one of my very first memories is working with my grandmother in her kitchen,
Mhm.
rolling dumplings for chicken and dumplings. Actually was going through some old photos over Thanksgiving, and someone gave me a picture, and it's me at probably 5 years old, sitting on the counter with a rolling pin, covered head to toe in flour. Um,
Love it.
and that's really one of my first memories of food and what it, the love that goes into it. And that's the thing about food here in Louisiana in general, New Orleans, Baton Rouge specifically, is that it's all about love.
Hmm.
People always ask me what's my favorite thing to cook with. Passion, love. That's always the answer. There's not a specific ingredient other than what I put into it that comes from within me.
Hmm.
So just the sharing and the giving part of food is what is more the most important. The flavors are just abundant and rich and local. And so you got to try really hard not to screw those up.
Yeah.
But the passion prevents that. It's just sharing that love and that joy with everyone.
And I mean, it really is true if you think about it. Most social events are circular, centered around food. And my Scott and I's funny, talk about when I first visited New Orleans, and you know, we laughed that as soon as y'all were finished eating breakfast or serving breakfast, it's kind of like you stood up and went straight back in the kitchen ready for lunch. And it was just kind of we just kind of stayed in the
Right, you got to
kitchen
clean up
so
and
long.
get yeah,
And yeah, so but I totally
yeah,
agree. I
and
mean,
that's
whether you cook with
should
love
be the
or
most
eat with
comfortable room
love,
of the house.
yeah, or share it. So it is part of love. I love that. What are some, for people who are not familiar with New Orleans, what are some standard dishes that, say, somebody was visiting New Orleans and you would say, you got to try this? What are some standard things that aren't so interesting to you, but maybe different for some of us? Because I have viewers from all over the world.
Okay, so one of my go-tos that I've put on the menu in one of the restaurants that I'm over in charge of now is just a basic barbecue shrimp and grits.
Hmm.
Um, it's a local beer that Worcestershire sauce, butter, rosemary, simmer all that together, reduce it down, and then saute some shrimp, pour the sauce in there with it, and then just as the shrimp are getting done, put some cold butter in there to kind of thicken that sauce.
Hmm.
Pour it over grits.
Hmm.
Uh, we use a smoked Gouda grit, so we make our grits with smoked Gouda cheese, lots of butter and cream, and very, very not healthy for you,
Yeah.
but very whole lot of love
Delicious.
goes into it and delicious, right? Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So
What
that's a
about
big one.
tell us the difference in like the jambalaya and the red beans and rice and the gumbo for people who don't know.
Okay. So gumbo is more of a almost a soup, but closer to a stew in that it's traditional gumbo is whatever you got, put it in the pot.
Hmm. Okay, that's good.
Because in reality, Cajun people were just poor,
Hmm.
and so it was everything, and it was a way to utilize bits and pieces of whatever was left over or whatever they could hunt or fish or find. And so it all went into the pot together and served over rice because rice is abundant and
Hmm.
it's inexpensive.
Hmm.
And so jambalaya, very similar concept, but without the excess liquid, and everything's put together with the rice.
Hmm.
And so, I mean, to me, they're almost the same thing, just completely different. So, if
Yeah.
that makes any sense at
Yeah,
all,
yeah. I love them
you know,
both so much.
jambalaya is dry,
Hmm.
comparatively speaking. Gumbo is more soup-like, and
Hmm.
so that's the difference there. One of them served over rice, one of them is the rice, and then red beans and rice. The story that everybody tells about red beans and rice is the reason we serve it on Mondays is because Monday was a laundry day. And red beans are something that you can put on the pot. They can simmer all day
Oh,
long
just let
while
it
you're
sit and
off
go.
doing laundry and whatever else. Yeah. So,
Ah, I love that.
back in the day when women would go down to the river or the creek or whatever and wash the clothes or outside doing a wash tub or whatever, they didn't have to be in the kitchen constantly watching something on the stove. And so it became a Monday tradition in Louisiana to have red beans and rice.
Man, that's good to know. I love that. Well, when it comes to maybe not specifically in your kitchen now, but in your past experiences and maybe in your own kitchen, what is something that I mean, what is your go-to? What do you love to make for people?
What do I love to make for people? I like to just open the pantry and see what's there.
Yeah.
That's probably my favorite thing to cook is, open the door
Mm-hmm.
of the pantry, open the refrigerator and say, all right, what can I do with this? How can I create something? But if I
Love
had
that
to
too.
choose something that I'm going to a store and I'm going to buy a product and I'm like, okay, this is specifically what I'm going to cook, love carbonara.
Yeah, okay.
It's quick, it's simple, but it's so intense and flavorful at the same time.
Hmm.
So
Well,
that's a
we
big
just went to Italy and I brought home all these spices and the even got the spoons and the pasta, and I went to a class, and I tell you, it was not anywhere near anywhere near the carbonara that I had there, but I gave it a good hard try. I really did. What about you have any like least favorite things? Are there things that you don't
one.
like to cook? Or is that a dumb question for a chef? I don't know.
No, it's not that I don't like to cook. I'm just not a big fan of fried food.
Uh-huh. Hmm.
And I hate working the fry station
Yeah.
in a restaurant
Okay.
just
Uh-huh.
because at the end of the day, you just feel greasy and you smell,
Yeah.
like fried food and it just doesn't go away.
Hmm. Yeah.
When I was working my way through the restaurants and working fry station, I would come home at night and just take like rubbing alcohol and wash my face with it to try to get all the grease off. It
Uh-huh.
was
Uh-huh.
horrible, but it's delicious. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
everybody loves fried food. So,
Of course. And no, and so I always wonder this. So when I was doing a lot of PT and my hands were always on people and all day long, the last thing I wanted to do is come home and give my husband a back massage, right? Or somebody who
right,
cleans
for sure.
houses all I always wonder, people who clean house all day when they come home, is their house really tidy? So I always wonder, after being in the kitchen all day and cooking, when you come home, do you like to cook for yourself or do you ever just open a box of mac and cheese?
So my youngest daughter, Riley, her favorite food is Kraft macaroni and cheese. So yeah, a lot of times that's what we have for dinner. That's what I'll cook for dinner. But um, usually I have to be in a mood to cook when I get home
Yeah.
after doing it all day.
Yeah.
It can get very overwhelming to come home at the end of the day and do the same thing I've been doing all day.
Yeah.
But at the same time, and I tell people this, and I kind of post this. I think I put this on Facebook the other day that if I've ever offered to cook for you after I've been,
Mm.
that's basically me telling you that I love you because
Yeah.
that's kind of
Yeah.
my love language. At the end of the day, if I'm going to come home and
Hmm.
do for you what I've been doing all day for
Yeah.
hundreds
Yeah.
and thousands of other people, it means something. It's not just, hey, let's have dinner. It's let me
Yes.
show you this. So that's kind of a thing for me.
Yeah, for sure. And then like when you go to a restaurant, I have one of my best friends is a personal stylist, and I always ask, are you constantly looking at what people are wearing? And for me, I constantly look how people are walking and their posture. I can't help it. When you go to a restaurant, what are you looking for in a dish? Are you looking at the presentation? Are you looking at obviously the quality, but do you just like pick it apart, or are you able to enjoy other people's foods?
Um, Most of the time, I'm just happy somebody else is cooking for me.
True, true.
But
Yeah.
the presentation is always important because you eat with your eyes first all the
Hmm.
time. The first thing you're
Okay.
going to see it, you're gonna be like, oh, that looks good. How many times have you
Yeah.
looked at a plate of food and oh, that looks like crap. I can't
That's
wait to
so
taste it.
true. That's so
You
true.
know, so presentation is super important. But and then, yeah, like you said, the quality of the ingredients. So I'm to me, price is never really a concern
Mm-hmm.
because I know what it takes to put that in front of me. So if I find somewhere something that is worth what they're asking for the food, I'm more than happy to pay for it. But at
Hmm.
the same time, if I go somewhere and I'm paying for a meal that like isn't worth it, then that's kind of disappointing.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
generally, it's more just about enjoying the company and who I'm with and what we're doing, what we're celebrating, or
Totally
just
true.
relaxing. And so for me, it's yes, in my mind, I'm probably going through like I would have done this
Yeah.
differently, I would have done
Yeah.
that differently, but
Yeah.
I try not to voice that very often because I'm just trying to relax and have a good time
Yeah.
usually. So
Yeah. When I think of a good cook, and this is just my thought, because we throw that around a lot. Oh, my mom was the best cook. Oh, my friend's the best cook. Oh, she's not a good cook. What? I never really understood that term. Like for me, I'm a recipe follower and I'm very type A. And so I would not really consider myself a good cook only because I need the recipe. But do I make like flavorful dishes? Yeah. But I always think somebody who's a good cook can understand what's missing or what's needed. I don't have that like at all. I don't know. Oh, is that something that's just learned? I mean, I'm constantly Googling, uh-oh, it's too salty what I do. Uh-oh, this, because I've messed something up. But what constitutes a good cook? I mean, would you say somebody who, if you follow a recipe and it tastes delicious, are you a good cook or not so much? I don't know. Or does it matter? I don't
well,
know.
that's a tough
It's
one.
just that
I,
term is thrown
I
around
don't.
so much. Like, what does it mean to
Yeah,
be a
I
good
think
cook? I
that
don't know.
for me, it's someone that can do the same thing over and over again, and it
Uh-huh.
always come out the same. In a
Okay.
restaurant, if I'm hiring a cook, I want someone that's going to follow the processes and the procedures that I've set in place, and that when they produce a product, it tastes exactly the same it does as it does whenever I produce it because that's what I need.
Mm-hmm.
So in a professional kitchen, creativity is the last thing I want in someone.
Oh,
Uh,
interesting. Okay.
because the recipes and the standards have all been set. And
Yeah.
so I need someone that is going to come in and every single day make this dish exactly the same.
Yeah. I get, yeah, in a restaurant saying that's totally true because people go back for a certain dish. And there's
Right.
restaurants I go to and I'm scared to try anything else because I know how much I love that,
The one thing.
the one
Right.
thing. Yeah.
For
Hmm.
sure. And so now as in the home cook realm, do you enjoy it? Do people enjoy the food when they sit down to eat? That's all that
Hmm.
really matters for that
Yeah.
part.
True. True.
I mean, it doesn't matter if you're feeding people and they're happy with what you fed them, you, you're a good cook.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah. That's true. That's true. So my favorite thing to do is I love to eat healthy and my favorite thing to do instead of just Googling healthy recipes is taking my favorite things, whether they're healthy or not, and changing them, making them into healthy dishes. So I can
Okay.
make a pizza or lasagna or things. And I've been known to make two separate things at home, just, just to please everybody when the kids were little. But what are your tips on making favorite dishes, standard dishes into healthy dishes?
I think a big thing for me, one of my first jobs while I was in culinary school is that I worked in a retirement community,
Hmm.
and so I learned to cook without salt.
I was about to say no salt.
Right. So
Uh-huh.
no salt, limited butter.
Mm-hmm.
So all of the stuff that makes Louisiana cuisine what it is,
Mm-hmm.
not having.
Mm-hmm.
But in Louisiana, and all these people have lived in Louisiana their whole life and expect flavor. And so for me, it became about how to layer flavors.
Mm.
So, using herbs and other spices and seasonings to as the flavor profile and not everything being, oh, well, it's salty, so it must be good.
Right,
And
right.
first having to learn that taste myself, having grown up on Louisiana cuisine and realizing that everything's so salty.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, not buying pre-made seasoning blends,
Mm-hmm.
making my own. And that's something that I've done. I do it now in the restaurant. We make a French fry seasoning,
Mm.
and I can't use oh, I can, but I don't use like a pre-made Louisiana Creole Cajun seasoning just
Mm-hmm.
because they're all too salty for me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so I've kind of designed my own blends and whatnot that have a probably half the salt of some of the nationally available products just because it was a habit I got into.
Mm-hmm.
And but you know, it's just substituting things, good carbs instead of, we're in Louisiana. Rice is on everything.
That's right.
Personally, I like brown rice,
Mm-hmm.
and it's probably an acquired taste for a lot of people around here, but it's still rice. It's just better for you. It does take longer to cook, but it's better for you in the long run.
Yeah.
Um, One of the good things about Louisiana though is that sweet potatoes are abundant. And
Mm-hmm.
so, we use those in a lot of dishes, but a lot of times I'll do sweet potatoes in place of, white potatoes instead of russet potatoes or whatever. Like I make gnocchi and I'll do it with sweet potatoes.
Mm-hmm.
And the cool thing about that is once you do it with a sweet potato, have a sweet and a savory option with it. If you put cinnamon and sugar on it, you just made dessert gnocchi.
Mm-hmm.
But if you do sage and brown butter and then it's
Mm-hmm.
a savory option. And so it's making small changes because nobody wants to go in and just completely change everything right off the bat
Right.
because that's hard. It's
Right.
difficult. So make small changes every day or make small changes to your recipe every time you make it to where maybe in a month this recipe is completely different than the original. But
Nice.
it's not an all at once kind of thing, and you've adjusted to the minor changes, and then it's easier to accept
Yeah.
the major change at the end. It's not a all or nothing kind of prospect.
Yeah.
So
And like with everything else, gradual changes are best. You've been in the industry so long. I mean, I've been in the fitness industry for over 30 years, and the fitness trends I have seen are insane. things I would never do now that, you just see so many changes and you wonder what's right and what's not right. And with all the diets that are out, I did a whole maybe 3 or 4 part series on the diets that are out. What trends do you see that maybe are here to stay? Or have you noticed any changes of like produce or the way people are eating? Or what are your thoughts on the trends?
I guess the good thing for me is that being in Louisiana, people eat the
Yeah.
way they've always eaten. They eat what they grew up
Yeah.
with. They eat what their grandmother made, and their
Yeah.
grandmother is following her grandmother's recipes. So, the staples here are always going to be what they are. Some of the major changes that are just kind of, kicking in and taking place here in Louisiana, what I would say is, moving towards more vegan and vegetarian
Mm-hmm.
lifestyle. Um, Gluten has
Yeah.
become
I
a
was
much
going to
bigger
ask you if
concern
you
for a lot
just
of
like,
people.
is that a crazy thing? We did a whole thing on gluten because it is kind of, people see gluten free and they just automatically think it's healthy for them. And, gluten can be good for me too. So,
Right? Yeah. No. Well, they got to replace it with something.
right, right, right.
That's the
Exactly.
when you go to the grocery store and you see fat-free cookies.
Yeah.
Yes, they're fat-free, but what did they replace the fat
Yeah.
with?
Sugar.
90% of the time, sugar. Exactly.
Yeah.
So, and so everything has its place. It's just learning the good and bad of all of it.
Yeah.
So,
And then to get a little personal, I mean, I didn't mention this before, but I obviously know you before we did this. You are my
right.
husband's first cousin. So I have visited you for 25 years in Louisiana. And you recently have lost some weight. And I wondered what you thought about that phrase, never trust a skinny cook. And maybe we have a lot of people that are members that are struggling with weight loss or want to lose some weight. And I know you've personally had some weight loss recently. And I always love to hear from people. I am glued to magazines when they've said, I've lost this much. I love to know what everybody's doing. And we'd love to know like what your thoughts are on like your personal weight loss story recently
Okay.
and how you
Um,
do it when you're around food all day.
it does make it more difficult for sure. Um, so I would say 20, 2018, 2019, I weighed just about 315, 320 pounds. Um, Decided I wasn't going to be around to see my daughters get married if I continued in that track.
Mhm.
So, just decided that it was time to make a change. And the biggest thing that I did was cut out sugar.
Mhm.
Um, sugar, white rice, white potatoes, any kind of white starch kind of was my go-to for starters.
Yep.
And then just moving.
Hmm.
I was a culinary instructor, so most days I was at a desk or teaching and minimal movements, whatever. And so I made the decision that I'm going to walk.
Hmm.
I spent 18 years in a kitchen working 18, 20-hour days. My knees and ankles are shot, and I
Hmm.
used it as an excuse to not move around too much, because, oh, it hurts.
Hmm.
Well, so does dying,
Hmm. Yeah,
So
there's worse pains for
I,
sure.
yeah, and I started with, okay, I'm gonna walk a half a mile today.
Mhm.
And saying it now is like that's not very much, but it was what I could do.
Yeah.
And then, every day, 10 more steps.
Hmm.
Okay, you walked 100 steps today, now walk 110, or whatever. And the big thing for me is, having someone that's supporting you and saying, you know what, okay, we're not going to eat that way anymore. Doing this together, or just having someone that, hey, you call up on the phone, hey, I just ate a cheeseburger and French fries, and okay, so you tomorrow you don't,
Right.
and
Yes.
realizing that a setback is not the same thing as failure.
Hmm.
You only fail when you quit.
Hmm.
So it's just making, again, it goes back to the whole changing the recipe, tiny steps.
Hmm.
And I went from, okay, I walked a half a mile, and then I was able to walk a mile, and then that became two, and then three, and then four. And then it came where, okay, I'm going to make sure that I get a minimum of 10,000 steps every single day.
Mhm.
If I don't get them at work, I'm going to do I'm going to get on the treadmill. I'm going to walk through the neighborhood. The dog and I will go for a walk until neither one, till we're both exhausted, and then we'll get a shower or whatever. And so initially it was cut out all of the things that I really enjoy, and got Irish grandparents. Grew up in Louisiana, so they went the potatoes and the rice. And what am I supposed to eat now?
Mhm.
So eliminating those things, but then realizing, once I started losing the weight, that I could eat them, but I wasn't going to eat as much of them.
Right.
That was a big thing for me, was portion control as well,
Yeah.
because
I think
limiting
that's
the
hard for a
bad
lot of
stuff.
people.
Yeah, because and the other thing for me as a chef was I was eating all day at work because I
Yeah,
was teaching at the time.
sure.
So, students are producing food. Well, I've got to taste it.
Mhm.
Doesn't mean I have to swallow it,
Yeah.
so it got in, I was, and still eating meals or whatever. But so I would start each glass and like, hey, I will taste your food, but I'm going to, spit it out. And it doesn't mean it's bad. I'm going to tell you if it's bad. I will tell you if it's good. I'll tell you what can change, whatever, but I'm not going to swallow it
Mhm.
because I'm on this diet and I need to do this for me. So you'll be okay, and at first it was a little awkward,
Can
but
you still taste and not like eat it?
yeah.
Oh, okay. I once read that's how Elton John lost a bunch of weight. And I'm like, I just don't even understand that, but okay.
Well,
Yes, you
you don't
can.
get you don't get the nutrition. You don't get your
Yeah.
stomach doesn't get full,
But
whatever.
you
You don't
get
get the
your
full
taste. I
filling,
guess your taste buds will.
but you get the whole taste and the smell and the textures and all
Yeah.
of that. And for me, that's all I needed, was to be able to tell them,
Yeah.
yes, you did this right, or no, you did this wrong. And then even in between those two, how to fix what was needed changing.
Hmm.
And so that was a thing. And then, like I said, limiting my portion sizes, controlling what I ate, and just moving.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I think at my lowest, I got down to 220.
Nice.
So
Are you feel like you can maintain well, or um are you able to enjoy, foods that you love, or do you feel like you really still kind of restrict what you're doing and eating?
um, well, throughout the process, I'm hypoglycemic, which was why sugar was one of the things that I chose to eliminate, or the
Yeah.
main thing. Um, so that for me has just become, I don't do sugar.
Yeah. And do
I
you
will
do
eat
you
it.
miss it, or is it
I don't.
yeah.
Um, I don't miss the feeling that I had when I ate it, because
Mhm.
I would get that rush and then I
Yeah.
would crash and I would have to have more.
Yes.
And so, there were times when I was at my heaviest or whatever, that my sugar would drop so much that I would make a peanut butter sandwich and put chocolate chips on it just to get the sugar, because I
Hmm.
didn't know how to eat right with that. I just knew that I needed sugar now,
Right.
because I would get headaches and all of the horrible things that come with your sugar being 30.
Hmm.
Um, and so learn to adjust that. So now I don't have those swings because I'm not doing the sugar. Um, so like a snack for me at night, I'll take a handful of mixed nuts and like 10 dark chocolate chips.
Yeah.
And that's kind of my sweet at the end of the day, whatever. So,
Great. That's
and
great.
that's probably twice a week.
Yeah.
But like, I made espresso creme brulee for a New Year's Eve event that we had at one of the casinos. I took 2 bites of it. I'm like, okay, that's more than enough of that. That's probably more sugar than I've had in 3 weeks. I'm,
Mhm.
going to put that down and walk away. Um, but also can have a cheeseburger, every now and then and be okay.
Yeah.
And, so my weight's, kind of staying where I'm at, about
Good.
230, 235. And it's just, I can, if I want to go out and do a big dinner,
Mhm.
I can.
Yeah.
I just know that I'm going to eat much healthier for the next 2 or 3 days, and probably have eaten, less leading up to it. But that's more just my mindset than anything else,
Yeah.
because I feel full faster.
Mm.
Um, I was in a meeting one day with some people, and they were talking about Whataburger and Five Guys and all these different, just all these are the best burger places.
Mhm.
and I just couldn't get it out of my head. So I had to go and have
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
So I ate a burger and fries and, a milkshake and all of that, and then felt like crap for 2 days and was
Mm.
like, that's why I don't do that anymore,
Yeah.
because
You
I
just kind
don't,
of have to remember that feeling. And you mentioned about if you know you're going to have a big dinner to kind of change. And we talk a lot about that in my group. We talk about planning. You don't want it to be
right,
overwhelming and consuming, but you have to be smart. And it's not,
right, yeah.
you can't
And
think
it's
that
not a
you're not going
punishment.
to go out to dinner. So you just have to plan a little bit better. And that's all.
And there's always something on the menu that's less bad for you than everything
Yes.
else.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and do I always make those choices? No.
Yeah. And
Sometimes I choose the worst thing on the menu for my diet and my health plan.
mhm.
But again, I'm there to enjoy myself,
Yeah.
and I know that I'll make a sacrifice
Yeah.
in another spot, or I'll walk an extra mile the next day, and it'll make me feel better about it, or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
beating myself up for making bad choices or for not sticking strictly to the no sugar, no carb kind of thing. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, congratulations. You look really great. And it's very inspirational to a lot of people who might be listening. So thank you for that.
thank you.
What would you my mantra when it comes to eating is it needs to be reasonable, sustainable, and enjoyable. Those are my three things when I talk to people about their diet plans. I loved what I'm gonna title this one whatever you got, put it in a pot because I never heard that. But I love that saying. But do you have any kind of quotes or mantras that you go by when it comes to food? I loved what you said about love, but I didn't know if you had anything to end us with.
I mean, I think that's just your favorite. The number one ingredient is always got to be passion.
Hmm.
We, especially in Louisiana, we cook with love,
Hmm.
and cooking for someone is my love language.
Yeah.
Uh, and so it's just if there's no love in it, you're gonna taste that,
Hmm. Hmm.
and that's something huge. Uh, Leah Chase, super famous New Orleans chef. When I was in culinary school, she came and did a demonstration, and I was actually cooking one of her recipes and didn't know she was coming.
Oh,
And she walks up and rubs me on the arm and says, "Young man, how are you doing today?" And I turned around and was completely awestruck, just, I mean, in awe that she was there and like, oh my God, I'm cooking her food. I can't screw this up.
mhm.
And so we're going through, and I taste it. And she goes, well, what do you think? I think I just followed your recipe to the T, and I'm not about to tell you that I think it needs something.
Yeah,
She goes,
exactly.
she goes, what do you think? I said, I think it needs a little bit more spice. I said, but I don't want to change your recipe. And she looked at me. She goes, don't ever cook, don't ever serve anything that you wouldn't eat.
Okay.
And she goes, and you're right. This this recipe always has add a little something at the end. She goes, every recipe you ever cook is going to be every recipe I've ever written, adjust seasoning to taste. That's the
Mhm.
last line on every recipe I ever write, because if you don't taste your food, how can you serve it to someone else?
Mhm.
So, it's just about making sure that love is your number one ingredient, and then buying the best that you can get.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be the most expensive, but don't buy super processed stuff whenever you can get fresh.
Yeah, that really makes a difference, doesn't it? Because I always skimp on that because I don't have a lot of the herbs and stuff, hanging out. But I'm like, man,
Right.
you really can tell the difference with
You
fresh
can't.
garlic and fresh herbs. Yeah, it really does make a difference. Well, look, I cannot thank you enough. I know you're so busy. So thank you so much
Oh,
for
you're
taking
welcome.
the time to talk to us. And I mean, I hope that our viewers are just excited to learn a little bit more about cooking and the restaurant business and putting more passion and love in their food because maybe that is something that can help them love food in a good way and not look at it in a negative way. Thinking about the things that we love to eat, not so much of what we shouldn't eat or can't eat. So I do thank you so much, and I thank you all for joining in for Jenny's Fit Bunch. Keep the ideas coming. I hope you enjoyed this interview, and I will see you all next week. Bye.
Thanks.